Hello, I'm OffeeD. I accidentally played Xenonauts 2. It's time to tell you all about it. We're going to have a relatively comfy time zipping through the campaign of Xenonauts 2. And this begins with picking our difficulty level. You get quite a few difficulty options, and it even tells you everything about what they do. Extremely good difficulty options in this game. And you know what? This morning, as I record this, they actually patched the game to make the easy difficulty recruit even easier. So we're playing on hardcore easy difficulty. The reason is I played on soldier in my first campaign and got absolutely obliterated. But they also patched the specific things that got me obliterated since then. So maybe if I was starting now, I actually would have gone for soldier difficulty. The main thing it does is just make there be fewer enemies in each combat encounter, which just makes everything easier overall. So that's very nice. How many fewer enemies are there? Well, actually it doesn't tell you that, I don't think, so who knows. Here's the first thing to talk about in this campaign, and this is something I missed when I first played this game. You can upgrade your base immediately, and you can upgrade it a load immediately. So what I did last time was I kind of waited for the game to be like, and now you can upgrade your base. You can go to this menu of surprisingly low opacity text on the right and just put down buildings in your base from the very first frame of the game. And because they take time to build, you want to do this on the first frame of the game. And you have tons of cash, so you can build substantial improvements that increase your research speed, increase the amount of soldiers you can have, and you can add training centers that allow your soldiers to gradually gain stats for the majority of your time on the campaign map where you're actually not fighting in missions. Otherwise, they can only train during missions, which not only doesn't really make sense, but it's difficult to use to train up because of course they're in such danger. So it's good that you can make actual training facilities. We can teach our guys to shoot other than the bonus to accuracy they get for having shot at enemies in battle, which I think is how it was done in Xenonauts 1. Something. We set up our base. We'll have to wait for anything to actually come of that, so we'll go straight in to the first mission. This is a mission that just sort of spawns without you having to down a UFO or anything. The aliens are just wandering around somewhere on Earth. It's time to encounter the aliens, and we immediately start shooting at each other, of course. If you don't know, Xenonauts is like XCOM, that's the easiest way to describe it, but to be more detailed, the aliens are gradually invading Earth. You've got, say, 20 guys and a handful of cash. Can you stop them? And that's the premise. What we need to do is not question the premise. I remember actually in XCOM, or Xenonauts, 1, it did explain the premise a bit more. There was some reason why the aliens couldn't just invade Earth and they were only sending 5 guys at a time, I seem to recall. Although I don't think there was a reason why the humans could only send 5 guys at a time. Something. We're just going to look at the game as we go through, and what I'll be doing is looking at the most interesting strategic moments and key plays, probably getting more and more abridged and refined as we go on, as I assume you'll be getting used to the tactics I'm going to be using. Right there, we went around a corner and shot an alien in the back. That was pretty successful. I knew the alien was there from seeing them in a previous turn, so we had an advantage there. Here's another technique. If you get somebody high up, they can sort of shoot over cover. I think cover bonuses are reduced when you're taking shots from above, like in regular XCOM. So that's an easy snipe for our guy who takes out that little alien back there. Here's a technique that really doesn't work, that I tried to use quite a lot in the beginning, and that is smoke. The interesting thing about smoke, or the unexpected thing, is that it does not block line of sight. So I'm smoking off this doorway to a warehouse so that the aliens inside don't see me coming up to the door. That's what I'm trying to do here. But smoke is see-through, it's just bulletproof as well, so it works in a slightly reversed sort of way. You can totally tell that the enemy are there through the smoke, you just can't shoot at them because the smoke is considered to be cover, and a couple of smokes in a row is considered to be in full cover. So we get something like this. The aliens use the smoke on me to burst out. My reaction fire, my overwatch fire against them, all misses because the enemy is considered to be in heavy cover while they're right in front of me in the smoke. And they shoot at me, in fact. So that didn't go very well in the end, and I came to appreciate that smoke was less my friend than I thought it was going to be. It might be more annoying if smoke actually blocked line of sight because it would block your line of sight, but still, I feel like it just didn't quite work like I thought it was going to be. Maybe the game even needs to separate something out. Have like a cover gas, some sort of sci-fi invention, where it's something that you can see through but stops bullets, like a magnetic field bomb or something, and then smoke, which just blocks line of sight like any other cover item, or any other terrain item I should say. Anyway, I threw a grenade into the smoke and killed the aliens in there. It actually leaves one alive because every alien has a secret hidden health bar, a second health bar, which is their consciousness bar. And if they ever have less health than they have less consciousness, they'll fall unconscious, and being in the smoke reduces your consciousness level. So, we're able to take an alien alive in the first mission, and that's useful because I think you need to take every kind of alien alive at least once during the campaign to unlock an interrogation research, the same sort of thing that XCOM does if you've played that. And basically everything in the game is like what XCOM does to some extent. It's also very much like what Xenonauts 1 does and like the old XCOM games from ages ago. An interesting quirk of game design or game production is that it's not illegal, I believe, to completely copy another studio's work, as long as you don't infringe on their intellectual property in terms of like a franchise. So you can just make XCOM if you want. You just have to call it something else. Maybe something else with X as the first letter so people kind of know where you're coming from, and there's nothing they can do about it. So it's very fair to rip people off. And I think that's a really good thing, because it allows us to have something like Xenonauts 2. Like in a full intellectual property world, you might expect a game like this to not be able to exist because it's completely competing with an existing property by stealing all of its techniques. Well, that's allowed in video games at the very least, and that means there are more video games. Another company can try to just do what you've done slightly better, but otherwise stealing all of your ideas, and that's just fine. I like that we have Xenonauts 2 in the world. You might hope this would sort of put the fire under the heels of whoever it is right now who owns the XCOM franchise to try and make a better game, but this is really going on its own old school vibe track, so it doesn't really compete with XCOM, it just competes with the old XCOM games, and I suppose nobody cares about that anymore. So we're not quite getting the full / intellectual property rights to encourage innovation sort of thing. In fact, Xenonauts 2 is probably best known for its lack of innovation. I've got a massive rant on my video about that sort of thing, or on my channel I should say, about that sort of thing, if you care about that. But in this video, we're just going to talk about the game. It's time for us to carefully advance, and I'll say this only in this mission and cut it out for the rest of the other missions. A lot of the missions are spent doing what we're seeing me doing here. Creeping about, trying to find the enemy, because you don't want to find the enemy at the end of your turn. The same deal as in XCOM really, where you want to have enough options for movement available to react to the enemy once you know where they actually are. Also in this game, your Overwatch status, as it was called in XCOM, the ability to fire during the other side's turn, is linked to how many time units you ended your turn with. So that just means in general, you don't want to use your full turn. You want to say, use half of your quote-unquote time moving and the rest of the time just doing nothing, and this will then be retroactively changed so that your character was aiming and firing their gun during their turn as the enemy turn happens. Some sort of time convolution happening because of course it's using a turn-based system to try and represent something happening in real time. So it's a bit confusing, and I still think that adding an actual Overwatch button and making it an explicit mechanic would probably solve this a little bit. We're not going to rant, I already promised that, but what you're seeing here, that's happening all the time. Now, because I'm a nice guy, let's cut to just the action. So here is the final action. I accidentally blew up an alien by throwing a breaching charge at a wall. I hope to just destroy the wall. It does matter to try and keep the aliens intact as you kill them because you get more loot. Well, after the battle, we're onto the campaign map gameplay, where we're mainly going to be waiting for various bars to go up. We have our research tree and an engineering department that builds things that your researchers researched. And you just have to do that to keep up with the fact that the game gets harder and harder as it goes on, so you have to get better equipment to not have the game get too much harder. That's the plan. It's kind of the other way around to the way I prefer it, in that you're just sort of always getting worse, and that you're trying to struggle to get less worse as you go on. So if you really think about it, it doesn't feel like you're making much progression with all of these mechanics. But that's just how it is in these games, so don't think about it, just do it. Try and do it well so you'll be ahead of the average position or something like that. Ranting aside for one moment, let's go on to the next mission. This second mission also just sort of spawns, so we're not into the randomly generated part of the game yet. And this is the perhaps infamous mission, you could say, where it has a time limit. In this game, there are various missions where you fight human opponents, but these missions are sort of gimmick missions where you have to do something within a time limit. And if the time limit runs out, the game will throw an infinite supply of new enemies at you, which could be sufficient to ruin your game if you're not close enough to evacuating the map by the time they're all over you. So, we need to act fast, essentially, which is antithetical to the game. The game's much easier the slower and more carefully you play it. Here, we're just going to run out of the chopper and start blasting. There are enemies right in front of us, and we saw there I took some reaction fire from the enemy. This is something I need to get better at dealing with. Essentially, if you act in front of an enemy that has some time units, which they do because this is the start of the stage, they have the option to fire at you during your actions, be it firing at them or just moving around. And it's based on some stats you can't see called reflexes and initiative. Those enemies have those stats, and I think maybe as you're like walking around in front of them, their initiative is building up or something, and eventually it will trigger them to do something about it. Well, we're supposed to try and play it safe, although as I said in this mission we don't want to play it particularly safe, but I did throw out some smoke, hoping to block their attacks against me during their turn. It sort of works. We're still taking a lot of fire, but we do get a whole bunch of misses. Each square of smoke reduces the chance that a shot will hit by 20%, so if it passes through a couple of blocks of smoke, you can get like a nice minus 60% chance to hit on the enemy, and things will go well. The smoke also benefits us because it causes the agent on the left there to fall unconscious. That's that stun bar going up in the background that I mentioned earlier. Now I wanted to charge in with my sword and shield guy to take out this crouching enemy at the back, but along the way discovered another enemy just inside the building. Also, stabbing somebody at point blank range doesn't do that much damage. It's good because it always hits, which is why I like it. But it wasn't enough in this case. However, throwing even more smoke into the mix knocks out another agent, and the actual main objective there was to protect my sword and shield person from the new enemy we'd just discovered. Everybody else went to the flanks to try and move into the building, but another enemy burst in and got some damage on my guy out on the right. Luckily, the guy in the middle just hangs around, sits in the smoke, and we just run in through the window beside him where he's not looking and blast him with this shotgun. So that's that, and that's another of my favourite moves because it's relatively likely to work. I like to try and eliminate the RNG as much as possible. This is an extremely RNG based game, but we're going to be playing mainly trying only safe strategies. I'll only do RNG based strategies if I have to, although all strategies are RNG based because the damage you do with attacks is RNG based and it's heavily variable. And you just have to react to that. But if you can eliminate as much RNG as possible, it gets to be a little bit more fun, where it's more like, ooh, a pleasant surprise, a new thing to deal with, and it's not just a tirade of unknowable actions and being out of control of the situation. I said I wouldn't rant, but obviously I'm going to keep accidentally ranting throughout this series. Here, we have some success because we get into the building and we start doing the objective. That objective is to touch 10 computers and steal their USB drives or something. Because we blasted all those enemies away, the first couple of rooms were now empty. So we've already got 6 out of the 10, but I accidentally round this corner and discover another guy. I kind of figured I'd aggroed all the enemies near me already, so these rooms would just be empty. But they're not. And again, because there's this time limit in the background, I'm rushing and running forwards each turn more than is reasonable, or more than I should, because it means my guys can't do Overwatch. As you can see, I have the blessing of RNGesus, because the guy who accidentally discovered an enemy at point blank range was missed 6 times by the enemy. Absolutely incredible RNG. So we just completely got away with that. And, you know, in a positive feedback loop game, that moment could be the RNG event that determines whether we win or lose the campaign. Because this mission will now go way better because of that. That will cause every mission after this to go better because of that. Essentially, getting extremely good RNG in the first couple of stages is going to pay off a really difficult to comprehend amount because it just compounds over and over. It's going to be impossible to keep track of how good that moment was for this campaign. But I just want to highlight that it could be all-encompassing. Having that one better soldier with higher stats who's still alive, completing this mission earlier, things like that, could mean the difference between coming away with no casualties and with 2 casualties, and those people who died in this mission in that other timeline might have protected 5 other people from dying over the next few months, and those 5 people would have saved your base from being destroyed. Like, it spirals up, things like that. Here's a little thing that I feel like is underpowered. Your rifle troops can do a 3-shot burst, but it's extremely inaccurate. I like to feel like the 3-shot burst should be really accurate at close range, and the 1-shot is for getting extra accuracy at long range, and you'll see me using a long range shot in a second. But because the close range burst isn't very good, I tended not to use it very much, getting like 40% chance to hit somebody standing exactly in front of you. At this stage, you can just put the barrel of the gun up against the target's body and pull the trigger for the 3-shot burst, and that should hit them. I like to think it should be more accurate, or just scale differently, so be really accurate but only at close range to account for recoil, something like that. So because it's not especially accurate, I tended to use multiple unaimed shots rather than burst fire, and I feel like that gives you better results, so maybe there's some questionable balancing going on there. The good news is that thanks to my good RNG, I have bumbled through the building quickly enough to get the things we needed to pick up roughly as the time limit came to a close. So what's going to be happening is enemies will start appearing in various places. I had these ideas about where they were going to appear. They definitely appear from somewhere up and left of where we are in the background, because I'd seen that happen before. But you might note I have this gunner who's sitting right by our deployment point, staring at the edge of the map, because I also thought they spawned on this road next to your helicopter, so that's what Beryl Burstfire here is doing, and has been doing for the whole mission, because I also couldn't remember, and literally couldn't keep track of how many turns had passed, because I'm not paying enough attention. But this cutscene tells you that that's the reinforcements starting to spawn, and they spawn every 2 turns, but I think after I played this footage, they nerfed it to every 5 turns, and they also nerfed the accuracy of all human opponents. So these missions are much easier now, or at least they're somewhat easier now, because people were mass complaining about how hard they are. For me, a combination of the fact I'm playing on the lowest difficulty, which reduces the number of enemies, and my extremely good RNG, means we're actually getting away with this. If there'd been, say, like 2 more enemies, we might have been a couple of rooms back in our advance, and we'd still be looking for the computers as the enemies started to spawn. And that's where things spiral out of control, because of how many enemies spawn, and the enemies that spawn are more powerful than the regular enemies on the map as well, and their unlimited numbers gives them a decent amount of power too. One of these cases where the developers probably found the mission easy because they knew where all the pickups were, and didn't realise that new players wouldn't really know where to go in these buildings and wouldn't have memorised the map layout already and stuff, and so would move through the map significantly slower and might take ages to kill single enemies because they don't know good ways to do it. Or maybe they'll just have bad luck. You can't count for any player experience in a game that's luck based. What am I doing here? I'm stealing this guy, because this is an evacuation mission, so you don't get loot in the same way that you normally do in most missions, where anything that's on the ground at the end of the stage goes into your inventory. Because we're leaving the stage with the battle unresolved for this, I'm only going to keep what's in my soldiers' inventory, so if I pick up a stunned enemy, I can drag them back to our base and interrogate them, which gives you a bonus to your damage against the cleaners, and advances this cleaner intelligence thing which you need to unlock some other cleaner missions. That doesn't matter quite so much. But anyway, that's why I just put that guy in my pocket. It isn't represented visually, so it's very weird, but one of my soldiers has a whole guy in their inventory, and we'll go and put them in the chopper. After getting back, sure enough, we've got 1 captured cleaner. We can do something with that, I'm sure. And we also get away with no deaths, and that's what I was really looking for, because that mission went very poorly for me the first time I tried to do it, and was a trial by fire. As I said, they did make it easier after I did this, so I suppose it was annoying a lot of people. As we go back, we can autopsy the cleaner we captured, and we discover what the cleaner thing is. I keep calling them cleaners. Basically, I thought it was going to be another XCOM-like faction, like another group that's trying to investigate aliens and do stuff about it. But I think they're supposed to be an alien spy organization instead. And what I believe they do in the game is, in the background, they're increasing the panic stat of the various regions, which determines how much money you get from them. The more panicked they are, the less money they give you. Not quite sure if that is how it works, or if that should be how it works, but something is happening with this invisible faction in the background. More importantly, we're now in the engineering room because I've got some upgrades to do. Of course, as we go through the game, we're going to want to get better and better equipment, just like in XCOM. We can get the first tier of upgrades really early on, the accelerated weapons, which are essentially just your own weapons but with some alien parts put in to make them slightly better. I was wondering about the meta, like should I wait and try to get the next tier of weapons without spending money on this first available set. But it's not so bad in this game because later you'll be having multiple Xenonauts bases all at the same time. So if you have spare equipment that you don't need anymore on your main team, you can give it to the secondary team. So having extra stuff that you're not using is generally not too bad. What I'm actually doing here is trying to be really big-brained. I was looking at the damage on all of the weapons and the damage on the new weapons and trying to work out how can I get the most extra DPS per money spent or something. Well, I had fun trying to work that out on my own, probably making all of the wrong decisions. I don't remember what I made decision-wise, and it probably doesn't matter. Here's what does matter. The main game loop has begun, so this is what we're going to be doing for most of the game, I suppose. Aliens will sometimes appear in your radar range. You only have the one radar to start with, but you can get more later. And if you see them, you can go and shoot the UFOs down to spawn missions, and then you send your team to go and do the mission. And that's how you get missions, and if you do enough missions, something good might happen, the game might progress in some way. You get to choose who to send on each mission, so it might be that 2 missions are happening simultaneously and you'll need to have a second team's worth of people in the base to send on that, and make a second helicopter to do it as well. But generally you send 9 people per mission, and the reason you can only send 9 is... So moving on, what I did was essentially take each character I have available in the base inventory, look at their stats, which are somewhat randomly generated, and decide what sort of thing they would be best at. So some soldiers, like ones with better accuracy, might be better snipers, things like that. You can sort of decide how you're going to use them based on how terrible they are at various things, and as you recruit troops, you'll have the opportunity to try and take ones who aren't as terrible as others. So there's an RNG element to how good the recruits are. And of course the recruits will be gaining stats during combat and later from the training mechanic I mentioned. I tended to gear up all of my soldiers with extra medpacks and extra grenades and remove a lot of breaching charges. It seems by default the game really wants you to use breaching charges on basically every class, but I tended to remove them because I just don't want to use breaching charges. I just go through the doors, I'm civilized. Anyway, here we are at the next mission, and one thing that took me a little bit by surprise is that in some missions, the fight can start immediately in turn 0 because the enemy can spawn like at your deployment zone, which generally tends not to be the case in XCOM-ish games. I don't remember if it was like this in Xenonauts 1, it probably was actually. But it's surprising because you don't get a field of vision from the helicopter very much anyway. Like, it's not like you can see the area around the landing site, so it takes you by surprise when you take a step forward and suddenly the fog of war is revealed and there are enemies right in front of you. I'm putting down some smoke here, trying to be tactical, thinking maybe I'll try to protect my guys in the helicopter from being fired at, but actually there's something more interesting going on here. I want to have this sniper shoot north towards that enemy up there. They can't see them, it's 100% blocked. Or is it? It's time for some Xenonauts cover mechanics shenanigans. You can see here, if I move this other soldier one step to the left, my minus 100% chance to hit thing is removed, and I can shoot through cover. This is because I think there is an un-UI represented cover leaning out system, where if the space next to you is empty and you're at some 100% cover, you can simulate walking out into the empty space, firing and walking back, without it costing time units, which it normally does. You can do that at any cover point, but sometimes you can do it for free, but it's not shown on the screen, which adds to the confusion. There's another confusing element here. For example, my line of sight to shoot that alien is blocked by 3 different things, all of which technically aren't in my line of sight because they're below the height from which I'm firing. So there's this confusion here where accuracy in real life is like based on the available visible cross-section of the enemy, but accuracy in the game is based on how blocked they are in the abstract sense. So if you're standing with, say, a brick in front of your foot, because there is now something, quote-unquote, between you and the front of you, you're considered to be blocked 40% by the brick on the floor, as if there is a 40% chance that the enemy might have been specifically firing at where the brick was down by your foot, and the brick blocked the bullet. So you get this strange thing where everything has a bigger hitbox than it looks like, and what you can't do is judge how in cover you are by looking at the graphics. The graphics are sort of abstract. They're representing what's going on. You have to get the lines on the screen and look at the numbers, and look at the thing that appears in the bottom right sometimes, describing the logic behind any given line of sight calculation. Now, I say all this both to complain about it for my own amusement and to potentially answer questions you might have for why I'm doing certain things or why I'm not doing certain things. So here I am back at it again. I can shoot through the wall of the helicopter in this circumstance. The fence this time isn't considered to be blocking line of sight because the corner pixel on cover items doesn't count. Something I ranted about in a previous video basically. So I can shoot through the wall of the helicopter and the fence in game logic to hit that enemy. Then, crucially, you saw me step back from the edge, because I think this works both ways. I'm not completely sure, but I think if you're in a cover situation where something is allowing you to shoot through your cover, the enemy can also shoot through your cover and you're not considered to be in cover. I think that's how it works, but don't quote me on that. Obviously, the problem here is that I don't know. I obviously should know that if I'm playing this game and I've played it so much. Well, something's happening with the UI and the UX there. We go on to obliterate the alien off to our right by just charging into the smoke and using a grenade. I'm being more cautious with these other two that I've got trapped in some smoke because I was trying to take one of them alive. I failed by accidentally killing both of them. But the good news is they weren't shooting at me during my turn, so I was able to successfully bring down these three aliens without endangering my squad thanks to my zealous use of smoke. To some extent it was because they were shooting civilians as well, which is always helpful. There was another enemy nearby. We bust into this mobile home of some kind and blast them away. There was this lone enemy wandering about to the left who I'm able to take alive, so I do get what I'm going for here, using the smoke stun. You can only do it if the enemy's nearly dead, then you can take them with smoke. This isn't important to do at all, I just felt clever for doing it, because now I can do the civilian interrogation research earlier than intended, because we haven't unlocked the stuff you usually use to take enemies alive. Does this matter at all? Is this helpful? No, I don't think it is. But, you know, I'm enjoying myself. And speaking of enjoying myself, here's my favourite part of virtually every mission in Xenonauts, the UFO attack. I would be 1000% happy if this was the entire game. I really like breaching the UFO, like going into this alien building where you don't know the layout, and using things like flashes, doorways, really close quarters like SWAT team-ish tactics. I think this suits the game's mechanics really well. The line of sight comes into play less because everything's happening at such short range and it's just more obvious what's going on. Well, let's praise this later because this is one of the worst instances of it, because we're just attacking a one-room UFO. When you get bigger UFOs, storming them is really interesting and fun to me, whereas walking across the map isn't. So we stormed that one. There was just one guy inside who, because of luck I suppose, didn't overwatch against us as I walked up right to his face, put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. There's a chance they would stop you from doing that. We don't know what that chance is and we get away with it in this case. You can also see we've gained loads of stats on our characters. So your characters do level up by doing certain things in missions, and I actually don't think the game tells you how that works, but I remembered how it worked from Xenonauts 1, because there it came with a manual that explained tons of stuff about the game. And I think it's essentially like every time you take an action, you level up something relevant to that action. So for example, moving a long way levels up your time units. I think having too much equipment levels up your strength. Firing at an enemy levels up your accuracy. It's things like that. And I even think, as I get shot right there, that getting shot actually levels up your health as well, although in this game, a lot of stuff will kill you in one hit, so it's a bad idea to try and grind for extra health, I suppose. And that was an example of where running up to an enemy doesn't work. They just shot me in the face pretty fast. Luckily, that's the weakest enemy in the game, so I don't take too much damage. We did take bleeding damage, as you might have seen, but because I've been very cautious about having med packs all over the squad, we can quickly reverse the bleeding and much of the damage is avoided. So now we spread out and start looking for enemies. I'm going to make another point about looking for enemies here, just so I can make it now and not do it again in the future. This is what it's like. You walk up to the edges of things, hope that they are considered to be cover if the enemy were to discover you during their turn, and just watch. You might note the screen vibrates very slightly during the enemy turn, and you can hear them firing at things. You can listen closely to guess where the enemy are, and as we saw there, civilians run around. That's what the enemy are firing at during their turn. And I think you can use where they're running to guess where the enemies are a little bit. Well, I'm not sure, because I've come to two possible conclusions with civilians. They either run away from enemies, or they run towards the enemies. And again, the problem is I can't tell which one, even after trying to be able to tell which one of those it is. It's not quite obvious, but I've seen plenty of cases of, say, civilians running into the UFO on a map. So you sort of think, am I supposed to be following the civilians to see where the enemy is? But sometimes maybe it feels like they're running away from the enemy and trying not to get shot, which is also like the intuitive way of doing it. Who knows? Well, we've spotted an enemy, so now here's an example of the sort of thing I don't like and why I prefer the UFO storming sections. We need to gradually move the team to engage this new opponent, and ideally we want everybody to engage the new opponent to absolutely minimize the chance of something going wrong. Against a single weak alien, we could probably do it with half the team pretty safely, but if you really want to be safe, you want to move as short a distance as possible every turn and move the entire squad together in each other's line of sight, minimizing the amount of the map that you are in so that you can be surprised the minimum amount. I think, again I'm not sure about this, that the AI only aggroes onto your squad and sort of reacts to you being on the map if they've seen you. So enemies off in the corners will just be doing their own thing, they won't be coming towards me or anything like that. So while I'm playing it safe, like keeping everybody watching different angles and things, I don't think the enemy will be coming towards me. Again, not quite sure. The sort of thing that would be really good to know, but more so the sort of thing that, in my sort of new cynical game design opinion, should be just cut out entirely. There I am taking some friendly fire damage, another classic Xenonauts problem. Your soldiers will react fire very inaccurately into your own men if your own men are nearby, so that's handy. Luckily in this case it's not too bad, we'll have to do something about it. But yes, I much prefer bursting into the UFO and going through the rooms with your whole team, because you're always near the action. There's much less time looking around and having to manually decide which direction people's heads are facing so you can try and find out where the enemy are. And then once you find the enemy, you have to spend a couple of turns setting up to engage the enemy and getting ready for it, because the ranges are quite quote-unquote long, so since everything in the game is very inaccurate. Sort of decisive action only happens at point-blank range. So anyway, I just really like the UFO parts, at least in comparison to something like this. This is also where having a shield is really important, because there's no easy cover to run to that's near the enemy. We can create cover sort of like this and make a somewhat safe advance. Running the shield forward first means if the enemy was going to overwatch against me, they might shoot the shield guy and it will hit the shield instead of the guy. The shield has its own health bar, I might have mentioned that already, so you can sacrifice the shield to take enemy shots and drain their time units, and then run up and kill them, as I did there. The shield and shotgun approach tends to be my favourite thing to do. Just be mobile cover and always be closing to close range to try and eliminate the RNG factor as much as possible, while controlling for overwatch with flashbangs and shields if possible. Is that an effective strategy? Well, I feel like it worked for me in Xenonauts 1. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in Xenonauts 2. Well, we don't have time to talk about that because we're going to do this instead. We're going to search this barn for enemies. The field of vision is very narrow. You can't move particularly far each turn, and you don't want to move far each turn. Like that move I just did there was pretty risky. If I walked out and there was an enemy there, they could have just immediately killed me in one hit with an Overwatch shot. So I'm playing things risky because it's boring not to play them riskily, but really you should be extra careful. You should be throwing flashbangs, you should be having your strongest character going ahead of everybody else and peeking around corners so they're least likely to die to sudden reaction fire or something like that. It's a game that's really set up for that tight, tactical, really cool feeling gameplay, but it's not very good to actually do it in most of the open-ended parts of the maps. And as I said, much more fun to do in the closed-off, tight sections of the maps where you're exploring alien bases and UFOs. You might note I keep breaking my promise to cut to the action and stop ranting about things. I think I might actually get into doing that as this video goes on, because this is going to take a while. Let's see some actual action and stop showing you me running around wheat fields. I'm just emphasizing this point so you get a bit annoyed by it, because that's the effect of the game as well. So you're getting a more genuine experience the more annoyed you are with me. Another great off-ED excuse. I thought I'd also add that I quite like this part in the same vein, setting up for the UFO attack. I think what I'm trying to say is that I like the part where you have a focus thing to do. Like here I could put that smoke down on the right to protect against incoming fire from the part of the map I haven't explored, and I can pick my cover set up ready for what's about to happen essentially. This feels more meaningful than the part where you're looking around for something to happen, hoping some gameplay happens. You can see what they're doing with it. It's nice and tense. You're supposed to be carefully sneaking around, just trying to catch the enemy unawares or something. And I kind of get it, but after playing XCOM and XCOM-like games for so long, I'm over it. It's not worth the upside of having the moving around part in these missions. But I like the part when you're in close quarters combat, like right here. We flash this room, flashing 2 of the weak Secton enemies, and I think this is our first encounter with the Mentarch, I think it's called, the flying brain. That's like the pilot of the UFO ships. And they're significantly more powerful because they have the next tier of weapon, which we don't know yet in this campaign, but I've played the campaign once before and seen that they can completely obliterate you in one hit if you just walk into these rooms without flashbanging them first. So we're doing things carefully now. Here I'm pondering how to attack the enemy with my shotgunners. You can see the accuracy falls off really fast with shotguns. If you're just a couple of meters away, you only have a 50% chance to hit them. And the way shotguns work is a little bit strange as well. They're considered to be a burst fire weapon, so if you fire with a 50% chance to hit, it gives you 3 50% rolls, and some of them can hit and some of them can't. So it's kind of like the spread on the shotguns is just absolutely extreme, and it's possible to shoot into a tile and have some of the parts of the buckshot miss the target, even at really close range. So it's all very glancing and chancy, but we get an absolutely amazing finish to this mission despite my ranting, because I'm able to smoke the 2 lesser aliens. The other alien just got stuck in the smoke and did nothing, and we went in for the finish. After that, I'm now checking out some tool tips, because our training center is ready back in the base. And in order to work out what it actually does, we can use a great feature that this game implements, which is the multiple layers of tooltips. I've seen a couple of other games try this, where a tooltip allows you to sort of freeze it in place and pull up another tooltip based on what that tooltip says, which allows you to sort of read the game's manual, so to speak, by pulling up all of these definitions of the words the game is using. And through this, I can gradually deduce that the training rate is going to give us 5 training points per hour. If you get 1,000 points, you get +1 in a stat, and it also mentions here you get +200 if you do something in a mission. The sort of thing where it would probably be really nice to have that be shown on the UI in the missions. So have it show what actions are training what attributes, and not have it be in a nested tooltip somewhere. Some people would say that's unimmersive or something, but at least I would like that to be an option. I want to have it say level up in missions when you get your progress points beyond whatever the barrier is, because it might be fun to see that happening, that sort of thing. And it's the sort of thing that would be easy enough to turn off and on as well for people who prefer the realistic sense where maybe you don't know what exactly is making your soldiers better. I feel like you should know. Well, anyway, I'm going to commit more to training. As you can see, I'm going to put down another training center to train more soldiers, so all the guys who aren't in combat will eventually come into combat later as replacements for our losses with not the baseline of stats. That's the idea. As for our main operatives, by the way, they don't train up so much because I believe the way it works is through diminishing returns, so your good soldiers don't really gain anything from training. It's only the rookies that gain stats at any appreciable rate. Now we're moving on to the next mission, which is another of the unique timed missions, where your goal is to save some civilians on the map, and the stage will just end after a few turns, so I guess the aliens are coming to pick up these civilians unless you save them. That means, like earlier with the timed mission, we have to rush and play things dangerously. We're not going to want to rely on Overwatch or moving carefully around in case we find the enemy. We just have to blast it looking for these things we need to collect, because we might not even see them before the time limit runs out, so we need to get as much map vision as we can. Hampered, by the way, by the fact this is a night mission. You can try to micromanage when missions take place by looking at where the shadow of the Earth is as the geoscape is rotating, quote unquote, to try and make a mission take place during the day at all times by timing when you let the helicopter leave your base. Because at night, line of sight is even worse than it is normally. Your soldiers don't really have lights or anything like that. They just can't see in front of them. And I believe, if I remember correctly from Xenonauts 1 at least, that does not apply to the aliens, so they have much longer line of sight. And on night missions, you can be attacked by aliens that can't see you because you can aggro things without realizing you've aggroed them. Anyway, looks like this was a case of that, where somebody burst into this room I was checking out. Luckily, even though they hit me through cover and I was mad, they've ended up standing right in front of 2 of my guys. I'm considering not firing at them here, I suspect, because I was thinking, is there some way for me to take this alien alive? Because you might note that's a new kind of alien, the Scion I think it's called. This is the main alien trooper. And if I could take one of them now, I'd probably have one alive earlier than the game intended, and I could feel good about that, even though it's not very helpful. So I moved this shotgun shield combo up here down this alley because there are 2 more enemies, including another Scion. It looks like I was setting up to make a shotgun attack on the nearer enemy, but I changed my mind and decided to prioritize. Because the shotgun has so much potential damage output, it can kill the more powerful enemy, and indeed it does. And then the handgun shot gets extremely high damage RNG and also kills the other enemy. So that went really well. We got roughly double the normal damage there, which is possible under damage RNG, just unlikely I suppose. So that's handy. We also burst through a door to the right and find an enemy, get a disappointing burst fire from the rifleman again. The burst fire really needs to be at close range to work at all. Just shooting twice normally always seems to be the better option, I think. Here I'm weighing up the time units needed to walk around this corner and take a pistol shot to get the finish. We can just about do it. Not guaranteed, of course, but the RNG is on our side once again, and we carry on. Getting relatively good RNG, I must say, in this campaign. We're having loads of great early missions where we're not taking loads of casualties. And that's going to make a huge difference as things go on, of course, but a difference that we won't know the size of. So let's just imagine in the background that things are going much better than they could do. Every time you think, this is going suspiciously well, it's because of some RNG thing that happened ages ago, and it's hard for us to trace back and work out exactly what that was. Now, moving on. I use a flare here to accidentally reveal some enemies. Luckily I've got a sniper set up to kill 1. You can throw an unlimited number of flares in night missions to extend your line of sight. The problem is that might cause you to accidentally see an enemy and possibly cause them to aggro onto you. So I think it's a bit dangerous to try and light up the way ahead of you with flares in night missions. My attempt to get my sniper behind 2 layers of cover failed there because we get shot anyway. As I said, I think the aliens don't take any accuracy penalty or line of sight penalty for it being at night. At least in Xenonauts 1, in the lore it said that was the case. We actually get the perfect ending to this mission because we avoid death from being shot, and then the entire team throws smoke bombs at the last remaining Scion soldier, allowing us to take them alive. So I'm going to get my dream here of taking a Scion alive early. As I said, this won't do anything, but it feels like I've achieved something. And we actually saved more than we needed to from the civilians that were trapped on the map. Basically, that mission went extremely well. And we can credit that to, well, both RNG and perhaps my increasing familiarity with tactics and what's a good idea to prioritize and when it's a good idea to take risks, like deciding who to fire at in close combat encounters, that sort of thing, and prioritizing damage as you saw me doing earlier. Well, who knows about that sort of thing. Maybe, through the course of this video, you'll see me getting good over the course of the many weeks that I was playing the campaign. For me, well, I don't really remember. Here's something that the developers didn't remember, to put in some text for what happens when you interrogate the Sibelian enemy. So nothing happens, but I think what it actually does is it gives you extra training rate. That's what I was going for. So before it said our training rate was 5. Here on this screen you can see it says it's 6 in the bottom left. So we get an extra point per hour from the intel we gained through interrogation. I'm also using the fact we've progressed into the 2nd month and got our monthly budget paid through to start upgrading our science facilities. Of course, tons of stuff in the game is locked behind a research tree, so to progress, essentially, this is the most important thing. Just get as much research as possible to unlock all of the items you can make and stuff. So that will be gradually coming along in the background. Here's another big development though. Since we have loads of cash now, I can just start another Xenonauts. You can have as many Xenonautses as you want in the world. And this gives you the advantage that only your bases can have your radar sights on them for some reason. This means if you want to actually get more missions and have more chances to prevent the population from panicking and to train up soldiers through doing missions and to collect bits and bobs as well, you want to get as much map coverage as possible. So you're probably going to want at least 3 bases in the end. So here we are starting our 2nd one in the 2nd month. It won't actually come online for a while because you have to build a certain amount of stuff in a base before you can really do anything with it. But in the background, we're going to be preparing for something. The other thing we'll need to do, of course, is prepare a second squad's worth of troops who can go over there and then start doing the missions. For those purposes, I'm going to try to make use of this training mechanic. So we'll have our central base full of soldiers we're not using, who are just constantly in training, building up slightly competent squads that will eventually be able to send out to staff other bases somewhere in the world, and then maybe we don't need to have training facilities in those bases. I had a vague plan going on. Is it going to actually pay off or even happen? We'll see as we go along. But I feel like grabbing that second base at the start of the second month is probably the most optimal time to do it, because you're going to get the most time with a second base, but it means, like, if you had built your second base in the first month, your first base would have far fewer buildings in it. So our ability to get the training centers and extra labs has been enhanced by waiting before we start the second Xenonauts, and it's just easier in the brain to manage as well. I feel like whatever I'm doing here is a good strategy. On what basis am I making that assessment? Almost none. My strategy sense is tingling that this is the way to go. We get a really good UFO detection here. Good, because we can take the UFO down at dawn, as it happened to be, so we're probably going to be able to get there during the day and avoid a night mission. So here we go. There's one more point actually I wanted to add while I'm thinking about it, which is, yesterday I checked the achievement data for Xenonauts 2. As I say this, it's a couple of weeks after the game came out, and only about 50% of people had the achievement for ever shooting down a UFO. And I think that's something worrying about the game that the developers might want to worry about as well. It might be the motivation behind why they made the early game cleaner missions easier, because the first chance you get in the game to shoot down a UFO is after you do one of the really difficult timed missions that's right at the beginning. And because it was something like 90+% of people had completed a mission and lost at least one soldier, but only 50% of people had killed a UFO, which is trivially easy if you get far enough in the game to encounter a UFO, suggests that an enormous proportion of the players don't play past the first hour or so, which possibly is because that first hour is surprisingly difficult, and of course you're going to sort of encounter up front all of the jank in the game that I've ranted about previously. So perhaps it's some combination of people just being like, actually I don't like this game, or people being like, man, this is too hard, I'm not gonna bother with this. I just feel like the game needed an easier start, in my opinion, and should ramp up to those really challenging missions later when you might already be equipped to do it, and thus enjoy it more facing that challenge. Anyway, while I was ranting, I was setting up to engage some aliens. I've sent 3 guys to stand off against 2 aliens off to the up and left, while our main team is going to the right. This is a bit dangerous, because the alien up there standing on the path will be able to shoot into the flank of my team going to the right. I set up some smoke and also got some damage on that alien with a lucky sniper shot as well, so I'm thinking I'm safe here, but I'm actually not safe for a different reason. The alien standing on the path can see my guy behind the edge of the red wall over there and takes me out instantly. One of those situations where I think that doesn't count as being in cover, or maybe it's just not 100% cover like you might think it is. A case where not being able to say use this wall as cover is difficult, and we saw that shot there against the civilian was a bit cheeky. A case where the cross-section on the shot was tiny, so the chance to hit should have been tiny, but I think in game logic that counts as an unobstructed shot with nothing in the way, because you can see them. Very frustrating, because I think while everything's happening according to the rules of the game and such, it just feels like it shouldn't be like that. It feels like my guy on the corner there should have been able to be completely out of the line of sight of the enemy around the corner, but he wasn't. Well, at least we take out the enemies quickly enough with a couple of burst fires. There was another enemy somewhere around here that we also took out at some point, but here I am, more importantly, checking to see if Fearless Franco here is really dead. One thing I still don't quite understand, actually, is how the you didn't die system works. There is a 50% chance, I believe, to not die when you get attacked. I think the way it works is it says you die in the mission, but after the mission there's a chance it will say actually you survived somehow. I was a bit confused because I saw a loading screen tip saying something like use a medpack to revive an unconscious party member, and I thought, does that mean people who technically aren't dead can be brought back into the fight with a medpack? Not quite sure. Well, I think the answer there is actually no, but maybe the communication could be a tiny bit better. The next alien we have to face off to the right is actually being bombarded by this civilian. Sometimes the random civilians on maps will actually have guns and will attack the enemy. In this case, I don't think they do very much, but it at least reveals that the enemy was standing right next to me. Moving on to the end, we're set up next to the UFO, ready to go in, and we get this great round of Overwatch because one of the enemies opens the door. I think on small UFOs, the enemy will sometimes randomly open the door even if they don't know you're out there, because the enemies move around inside the UFO in a randomish sort of way, and sometimes they'll happen to move outside of the UFO a little bit and then go back in on their next turn. But if you happen to be standing there at the door, you can blast them with Overwatch as long as you didn't move during your last turn. So I often just waste a turn standing at the door doing nothing in case somebody comes out, and you could even just sit there doing that for ages and eventually somebody probably will come out. We capture the final alien, the Mentarch, so that's useful, but we do come away with a casualty. That guy didn't somehow survive in the end. We're going to interrogate the captured alien as soon as possible to get that training bonus as soon as possible. Here we've unlocked some cleaner missions. There's this cleaner network progress thing you can see at the bottom, so over time you're gathering more intel on what the cleaners are. And you unlock missions, and doing these cleaner cell missions will accelerate that process. The thing is, I wasn't that interested in doing them because I'd tried to do them in my first campaign and found they're really hard. I thought, well, maybe I could just ignore it for a bit. At least I want to get this interrogation cleaner research done first because it gives you bonus damage against cleaners. However, I also want to do Alien Origins Plot, because that gives you bonus money per month. So I want to do that at least before the end of the next month to get the most possible money out of that tech right now. So we're doing some actual consideration, some actual strategy to the research there. Maybe it's the right thing to do, who knows. It's time to set up our second base, and to get things started, I decided to send over every other party member from the first base. So that means the second base will have a small squad of people with some actual experience to help out, get the team going over there. Especially because, when it comes to hiring new people, we want the new people to be coming into our first base because all of the training facilities are there. So we're mainly sending the people who were operating the first base to the second base, and we're going to start a new inferior squad at the first base, but that squad will level up relatively fast. You need to keep in mind that diminishing returns thing I mentioned earlier, which means if you take a soldier who has low stats initially, they'll end up with relatively low stats later because you can only gain a certain amount of number in each category. So we need to take people who are good from the beginning, ideally. And also, we need to take people who will fill in the roles that we need in this squad. So I might be thinking, I need a sniper, I'll take somebody with a high accuracy stat like this person here. The best way to go through this list, by the way, is to buy people one at a time, not what I'm doing here. Because the soldiers are randomly generated and a new one is added every time you buy somebody, it might be that the person generated after I buy the first person is better than the second person I just bought there, and I would have wanted to buy the new person instead. So if you want to be truly cool, in a truly Xenonaut style, you do things as slow and as methodical as possible, even when it comes to going down these lists. So we fill out the squad with some new losers who'll gradually level up. We also need to transfer over planes. We need to get some of our planes into the second base to have some air superiority and be able to spawn missions, which is the problem we have. Right now, there are aliens hanging out over there, we've detected them, but with only one plane available, we can't stop them, because these are the destroyer type alien craft rather than the scout type we were facing earlier, and I believe you need at least 2 planes to take down a destroyer. Both bases end up with 1 plane because another one is being transferred across invisibly, and I need to spend some time building more planes in the background. However, you don't always have to destroy a UFO to spawn a mission. We get a landing mission. These missions are more difficult because not only do you not have much time to get to them, but because the aliens have landed and set up properly, it means there'll be more enemies on the map. But it's better than not doing a mission, so it's time to send out a team that's going to be filled with not very good party members actually, and we get bad luck with the timing. You can see me here pausing just before I reached the mission, thinking maybe I should just not even do it, because it's just about going to be at night. What we need here is the ability to land near the mission site, and if the mission doesn't despawn before the morning, to do it in the morning instead. You can sort of do that by having a helicopter fly around in circles with some micromanagement, but it's kind of weird and annoying, and I didn't do it in this case, obviously. So it's time for a night mission. We just need to throw out some flares to work out if the enemy are actually right next to us, and it turns out they were in the direction I wasn't facing. There's an enemy around that corner, a new kind of enemy. This is the ranged specialist enemy, who isn't very strong, but is really good offensively against you. I didn't know that yet, of course. I just wanted to not deal with them, so I threw a smoke at their corner of the map there so they can't see us. Quote-unquote can't see us, they actually can because of how smoke doesn't operate like smoke. Well, we'll see that in a second. There's another guy coming at us from the left, so we'll have to keep that in mind. Luckily he doesn't attack. But the guy in the smoke moves up a bit and then shoots out and one-shots somebody on the other side of our formation, so that was nasty. That's what these aliens are good at. They have great overwatch and great long-range attack. So I'm guessing that means even though that shot would have been blocked by a couple of smoke things, blocked a bit by the fact it's night as well, and was relatively long range for this game, they might still have had a really high chance to make that shot if their initial chance to shoot was like 200% or something like that. Having a 100% reduction on it still leaves it at 100%. I'm checking the corpse again, being like, surely you're not dead. Get up, grenade addict. But no, he was just absolutely iced immediately, just like in that other mission, so we're getting bad luck with this. At least we get good luck from this shooting. A couple of misses come in when a new enemy spawns, or new enemy appears, I should say, aggroes. Still not sure if enemies at night will aggro earlier, because you aggro enemies by quote-unquote seeing them, but at night they are seen but in the fog of war, so you don't see them, but they are considered to be aggroed and start attacking you from the fog of war. Maybe that's something that's going on, who knows. We use a grenade to take out the alien on the left, and then we get a relatively decent shot from this rifle troop, doing absolutely tons of damage that takes out that enemy over there instantly. And I was like, wait a minute, how did I do so much damage? And I was looking at the tooltip. I guess I'm starting to get on board with this whole damage RNG thing, starting to appreciate that if it says your weapon has 40 damage, it might do 80 damage, things like that, which is such a big range that I don't like it. It's too unreliable, because it damages the strategicness of fighting. You can't think, I'll do this, because it's really hard to know the outcome of firing at an enemy, both for damage and chance to hit as well. That's how it's supposed to be, but I always feel like, even though it's more realistic, I suppose, it's not as interesting as a gameplay mechanic. Here's a little moment that feeds in possibly to what I said earlier. Me throwing that flare causes me to see that enemy, and what I don't know is, would the enemy have not been aggroed and not participated in the battle if I hadn't thrown the flare and thus seen them? Because I feel like it's you seeing the enemy that wakes them up and makes them start shooting at you. Looks like we've got another enemy to deal with off to the right, but the exact positioning of this train allows me to be out of the line of sight of the guy to the left while being in cover with respect to the guy to the right. We have to be a bit careful here, of course, about using what the map looks like to judge lines of sight and who's in cover from what position, but in this case I think we're okay. Looks like a civilian came to join the fray off from the left somewhere. That proved to be a bad idea. We get the enemy doing the suboptimal Xenonauts play where they used all their time units to run into combat and then just die. The exact sort of thing you want to avoid. They should have been moving one tile at a time, of course. We smoke our way forwards and capture the mantid back there. That was nice, although we did kill the other one. And now we make our breach on the UFO. We can use some of the fact that your chance to hit something sort of takes into account the fact you might hit another enemy in front of them here. So I can fire with a 67% chance at the enemy in the background, despite it sort of looking like I can't see them. But some of the mischance is the chance to actually just hit the other enemy, so your chance of doing damage is higher than it looks like. You sort of have to do the calculation yourself there. I think it's something like 25% chance extra than what it says to actually do some damage. We move in and capture that civilian alive, very good. And we're lucky because the other guy in this room is facing the corner and can just be killed instantly. I think that's because of that random movement thing I talked about. They might move away from the door and just be standing with their back to the door as you come through by random chance, so that's handy. We go on to make another room breach because this is a bigger UFO, there are more rooms to go through. There's two guys in this final room. Luckily we can just flash them together because they're close to each other, but I'm making some actual consideration here. We're going to flash them with somebody who's further away from the action, so that the guys closer to the action can then go in with more time units to do more stuff. That's the idea anyway. I like making those sorts of considerations, and again, they tend to only really come up in these really tight, like, breach situations that happen sometimes in the game, my favourite part. Well, everybody just bursts in after that and starts shooting, because the enemy are suppressed, they can't do anything about it, and the RNG can be overcome with sheer firepower. We go right into another mission, because the other UFO that was flying around Ended up being in range of my first base, so we go out and attack it. I wasn't quite sure if 2 fighters could destroy a destroyer enemy. Turns out they can, so here we go. It's one of these cases where we witness the lack of maps in the game. That UFO crashed somewhere in the mountains of Iran by the looks of things, but here we are in the hedgerowed, red-barned, rural America map, because this is like the countryside. I think the world is divided up into countryside, desert, ice, and urban environments. So there's quite a few maps that are just like this. There aren't enough map assets. And it did actually say in the roadmap for early access that they are planning on adding a bunch more map types and map assets. I don't know whether it's better than Xenonauts 1 in that regard. I can't remember how many maps there were, but maps that looked exactly like this were certainly in Xenonauts 1, so they've remade them very faithfully. Here's a situation where I knew the enemy was somewhere behind that hedge, so I fired a grenade at the hedge with a 0% chance to hit it, still very confusing with the chance to hit. Well, we do hit the hedge, it seems, but we don't quite hit the enemy because it turns out they're slightly further along the hedge. We'll have to move somebody up to discover this. Well, at least we've got a grenadier back in the team. I mentioned before, it might have been in the previous video actually, that I don't really like the grenadiers because they're so weird. But we finally got one back in action. I actually realized something about the grenadiers that can make them much more effective, so I'll reveal that to you a bit later. We're safe from that enemy during the enemy turn because I flashed them. I think that flashbanging an enemy makes them only have half time units during their turn. Still not quite sure about that. That could do with explaining. But it means the enemy are less likely to move and shoot, and in this case they just stand there, so they're probably setting up for an overwatch back there by not moving and trying to keep enough time units to make a shot during this turn right here. But I'm still going to run up to them and attack anyway. There is a chance that even if the enemy can overwatch you, that they just won't, so that's one of those invisible RNG things. So in this case, it's totally not safe for me to do the move I'm doing here. You'll see that it works in this case for some reason, but it shouldn't work. Perhaps because they have half time units, because I think one thing that factors into the RNG of whether you will overwatch is not only do you have enough time units to shoot, but it takes what your max time units is and looks at the proportion you have left. So even if this enemy has enough time units to shoot us multiple times as we come in, if they normally have loads more time units than that, they might not shoot because that factors into the RNG calculation in some way. Obviously, I'm just wildly speculating here based on loading screen tips and things I vaguely remember from Xenonauts 1, stuff like that. I think it would be nice if it just told the player this information straight up and have it in the UI all the time. Here's another weird percent thing. I'm trying to shoot in between those two enemies. I had a 46% chance of hitting, and we actually do hit by the looks of things. But what I don't know is, when it says there's a 46% chance of hitting the middle tile, does that mean there's, say, a 10% chance it will hit each tile around it instead? Or is it, as we saw earlier, cases where if it misses, it just flies off into the background? Which certainly does sometimes happen, so that is a factor. But it's hard to guess whether you should risk grenade launcher shots because you don't actually know where the missed shot is going to go, and it might matter, it might still be fine to miss. As you can see, I spammed smoke all over the place to advance to the left on this map, and captured multiple enemies alive using the smoke, which was good. I'm also wildly running about with Flashbanger here. He's lost his shield to an enemy overwatch, but he's still rampaging into the UFO, it seems, going in first to capture another enemy alive. We're going to have to soup to take this enemy dead. But generally, in this stage, we took loads of enemies alive, including 2 more civilians in the final room. Because while it's a little bit harder usually to take enemies alive, it has a 100% chance of working, which I really like, and you can make money off alive enemies. I think you need 1 of every alive enemy to progress the game, and the rest you capture can just be sold off to people, and they're worth more than the dead versions of the aliens. So here's the post-battle summary, capturing tons of aliens alive. Everyone's leveling up. We're getting a pretty decent first squad. They've been through loads of missions without casualties. So we've got loads of experienced operatives right now, which is all very nice. Here's a look at our inventory. It's time to sell some stuff. I had been very hesitant to do this because I felt like, don't you need this stuff for something? I think most of the stuff you can capture doesn't have any purpose and just has to be sold off, with the exception of alloys and alenium. All of the enemies' corpses, their weapons, their scanners, which you find sometimes, and the alive aliens you capture can just be sold, but you do get diminishing returns. You get less and less every time you do this. The market value is very strict on these things. People only want aliens a certain amount and they get bored of them real fast, so after a while they won't care if you're putting up a live alien on eBay. No one's going to buy that, you have to lower the price. Unfortunate. So we make some money off selling some stuff, but perhaps more importantly, we need to sell stuff because you do have a limited inventory capacity in this game, which was something that annoyed me quite a bit as I was playing. You see it here flashing up to say, we can't do any engineering work because the base has no storage space. It's like, surely we can overcome this issue. It's sort of abstract as a challenge because everything in your inventory takes up one storage space. So a handgun and a live enemy take up the same amount of space in your base. Meaning if you have a lot of small things, or like data as I have here, little USB sticks, they're taking up tons of space in the base somehow. It also invites the speculation that the way we have these aliens kept captive is we just have them in the storage room, and if you want to go in there to get a USB drive, there are like 5 civilians just standing there being kept alive. I guess we feed them sometimes or something, I don't know. Feels like maybe you should have to build a prison or some containment or something to capture enemies alive and just keep them alive in your base for no reason. Or there should be more reason to capturing enemies alive. Perhaps you could get more intel out of them or turn them onto your side, something cool like that. Again, we're speculating about cool innovations that the sequel could have done, but they're not here. What you can see me doing here is considering doing the cleaner cell mission that spawned a while back. I ended up not doing it because with these missions, it feels like you might as well wait, because they don't get any harder, I think, if you just don't do them, so you could do them later with a more powerful squad. But there is actually an advantage to doing them early, because if you can defeat the cleaners earlier, you make money effectively, in that the cleaners will be reducing your income over time, so the sooner in the game you kill them, the more money you'll have in the game later, but also the less likely you'll be to succeed. And that risk reward is just completely invisible to you, so there's an unknown risk for an unknown reward, so I just don't have any idea when a good time to try it would be. Because of that, I just didn't even bother, because I had tried it as soon as possible in my first campaign, found it really hard, so my only data point is, do it later. So here we are not doing it. Here was something I thought was interesting. In the plot, we discover that the reason the aliens have loads of different alien types to attack us with is actually a bit different to the usual generic XCOM plot that keeps being used, where there's some master race that has captured all these other races and sends them into battle on their behalf. This time, it's a race that's moving between dimensions, and all of the different aliens you face are from different Earths instead of different planets. Now, this doesn't functionally mean anything. Certainly it could, and opens up so many possibilities for new plots where you can go to the other Earths, of course, and have bases there and stuff. But, again, we're thinking of a sequel that's too good. Keeping things in reality, it doesn't matter whatsoever, which generally is the plot attitude of XCOM games. There is a plot, but it's just sort of there because people say you should have a plot. It doesn't really affect the game very much, or matter, or stand up to any scrutiny. Now, with that ranting aside, it's time for a terror mission. The terror mission is basically an occasionally occurring version of the landed UFO mission, where if you don't go to it, you get tons of panic. So you can not go to any mission in the game. Usually you do want to go, because that's how you get stuff in the game, that's how you level up and things. But I do wonder, since you can do the new training system, is there a viable path through the game where you focus all of your money on training centers and aircraft, and just really focus on blowing the aliens out of the sky and minimizing the amount of times they land? Because I believe all of the alien missions can be cancelled if you take out the ships doing them. They just sort of spawn suddenly as missions because you didn't see the UFO doing it. If you really focus on getting tons of radars down and tons of planes, and just have your squad training constantly and occasionally taking them out for mandatory missions or to capture aliens for the plot, things like that, you might be able to do a relatively low-risk playthrough of Xenonauts with not much combat in it, which actually appeals to me immensely. By the way, if you're wondering what's going on in this footage, this was when I realized, I cottoned on to the fact that, wait a minute, this game's rendering everything in 3D, you just can't tell, because you can tell while rotating the camera. The camera doesn't snap rotations. So it actually does allow you to see everything in the game from every direction. It's just locked to 4 directions normally, so it looks like it's the classic 4-direction sprite-based graphics of Xenonauts 1. So part of the whole will so faithfully recreate the old game, but it doesn't necessarily utilize being in a fully 3D game engine with all the potential of realistic things like line of sight that this could bring in. It's still sort of an old school sprite-based game, a very confusing setup that I ranted about in a previous video, so let's leave it there. Basically, apparently the aliens are terrorizing this jungle. Everybody's going to panic if this jungle area falls, so we're going to send in 8 guys, a robot, and maybe the odd scrounged up firearm to try and do something about it. I actually lied, by the way, this isn't the terror mission because I got confused, but we'll reveal that in a second. Check this out. Things were going well until I tried to get to this rock, and boom, barrel burst fire goes down with no burst whatsoever, a one-shot kill from somewhere. I thought for a second this might be an alien that's visible but was hidden behind the leaves from the perspective of the camera, but no, there are somehow a couple of tiles there that I can't see, despite actually having a guy right there. He can't see those tiles that are blocked by the tree that doesn't look like it's blocking his line of sight. And yes, there was an alien sitting there, so we got screwed over. Now, it's one of these situations where that wouldn't have happened if I played correctly. I tried to move 2 cover positions forward because walking 1 cover position forward every turn, so you always have plenty of safety, plenty of overwatchability, is a bit boring and it takes a while. Often I'm playing these games and it's like, well, I've only got 40 minutes to play it. I kind of want to get through this and see like the next tech come through or something. So I tend to rush things, and this really isn't a game for doing that. Well, we'll see me being more careful in future missions. I felt like I got more and more careful as I went on, as I realized how important it was, and realized how bad it would be to actually like lose really deep into the campaign. Anyway, here was a great setup for the UFO where we just stood in the door with all of our Overwatch ready and hoped the enemy would come out with their random movement. A couple of them come out, we kill one and damage the other, then we just burst through the entire place, blasting the place to pieces, and that's an easy capture on the UFO. So a great mission that was just marred by the fact we suddenly lost a character right near the start. Unfortunate, but that's the sort of thing you need to be careful about. As implied, that was actually a normal mission, not the terror mission that took place at about the same time, and I just messed up the editing, but whatever. Here's the terror mission I was talking about earlier, taking place in a city. It gets started quite poorly here because I saw this alien standing in a corner with the bushes around him and I thought if I can get a grenade in there it will probably hit something and damage him, but no, he still managed to sail it over the wall at the back. I think that was because I accidentally targeted the alien and not the ground he was standing on. That might have caused it to be more likely to hit the wall behind him. Still not sure if that is the case, but at least it was another example of grenade launchers being useless in terms of their accuracy, but having extremely long range for some reason. I'm sure there's some exploit you can do with that. You might have also spotted it said something like replacement has been mesmerized. There is an effect you get when trying to attack the regular alien soldiers, where you can take status effects in return for attacking them, so you sort of have to kill them in one hit to be safer with those guys. We'll see a bit more of that in a second actually, because this is really the mission where I discovered that mechanic. In the meantime, we're also facing a new enemy, this floating thing looking through these supermarket windows. And I was cautious about going in here because I'm sitting here crouched behind this bus thinking, what in this room full of glass is going to count as cover in the game's logic? I avoided sitting at the glass walls, even though they actually are considered cover, and instead sat by the shelves, which are not considered cover. At least I don't think they are. You can see I'm allowed to shoot as if they aren't there in the hit chance probability. So does that mean the game's doing some cover mechanics and being like you're leaning through the shelf and shooting through because it's got holes in the middle or something like that? Or is it just not there in the game's line of sight calculations? We don't know, but we are getting reaction fire through it, so that's useful, not that it did any damage. And the enemy was busy killing someone else, same deal over there by the looks of things. We're benefiting once again from there being a few local civilians who can die for us, or local soldiers actually in this case, who are equally useless. Now, speaking of useless, I thought I would capture this thing alive after I damaged it. Turns out you can't take it alive. It also explodes when you die, so trying to take it alive in melee is a very bad idea. Another Xenonauts, oh, so that's how it is moment. Well, at least we didn't die in this case. Here's another that's how it is moment. I tried to blow up this bus with a grenade launcher. I thought maybe it would be like in XCOM, where vehicles explode if you not explode something else next to them or damage them sufficiently. Well, you know, it actually does work like that in this game, and we'll find that out the hard way later, but that was just footage of me coming to believe that it didn't work like that. Foreshadowing. Another bad idea on my part, by the way, is the fact I've split my team up to fight in two directions. I quickly remedied this by having the leftward team come back to join the rightward team, who are sitting in this storeroom, and you saw me there doing a cheeky door maneuver, open a door, shoot, and then close the door again, so that the enemy are in your line of sight briefly during your turn, but they can't get line of sight of you during their turn. I remember doing that a lot in the original Xenonauts, and it still works pretty good here. Thanks to the local forces, we can see that something's going on outside. There's somebody in the bus stop shooting towards the building, so we'll keep that in mind. But I'm more focused on this garden over here. We open the next door and see there are two aliens, both standing with their backs to us, which is handy. I take this shot, get a hit, take a second shot, miss, and get hit, because shooting at an enemy can trigger their overwatch. However, it's also one of the main soldier enemies, the Scions, the red guys. And as I said, they can give you status effects if you attack them. And it just sort of happens in a very unannounced way. I turn around and Timely Tina here is now on the enemy side. They can mind control you if you shoot at them. So it's not actually a move like it was in original XCOM, or the remake XCOM I'm thinking of actually, where mind control, an incredibly powerful ability, can be used on you sometimes based on certain psi stats your characters have, whether they can resist being mind controlled or not. Here we have the equivalent mechanic, only it's Overwatch as well, so if you attack something that can mind control you, they might just instantly mind control you. Whether there's an RNG chance to it, I don't know. There presumably is, and it just doesn't tell you what it is. So you do need to be very careful. I think you need to either kill these guys instantly, or you can shoot at them from their flanks, and then if they turn to face you, hide, that sort of thing. We are able to avoid actually losing Timely Tina, as you saw, because I used a stun stick attack and then smoking myself to knock her out. So I avoided having to euthanize my own team member because of that mind control. One of the aliens came to a great position on the other side of this door that I had a couple of guys hiding behind. There's some nice line of sight jank going on here as well, because I can't see where that alien was. Like, I have full vision on the road, but I don't even have vision on the room that I'm in at the same time. Like, my guys can't see the water cooler behind them, but they can see the other side of the wall. Nice line of sight going on. I think the actual reason in this situation is because I have somebody on the roof of this building, and height doesn't block line of sight in the way you might think it does. So if you're sitting on the roof of a building, you can see like the base of the wall beneath you, even if that wouldn't be visible, sort of logically speaking. So it works in a more simplistic way that you need to keep in mind. And, well, we see an example of it here actually. There's an enemy that shoots at one of my people on the roof after this guy's done doing absolutely nothing, which was actually a pretty good move for me. And you saw there, it shot through the wall, through the floor, and hits me in a position where it feels like, because I'm up there, somebody down there shouldn't be able to see me this far back on a roof that also has a wall around it, and I'm crouching down. But again, we just learn that lesson the hard way every time. It's not how it looks like it is, and that is one of the things I would have hoped they'd improved, because it was also annoying in the previous game. Well, we can instantly heal up our sniper here because I'm going for this 2-sniper setup. My rule is that you want to try and keep somebody with a medkit in range of somebody else at all times. So if somebody's going up on the roof, someone else has to also go up on the roof to deal with that exact situation. So you'll see me trying not to have like lone wolf snipers in great positions just because I don't want to leave anybody on their own. I'm nice like that. Now when it comes to this thing in the road, I fired a grenade. It did no damage. We shoot it, it does no damage, so how's that going for me? Well, it turns out this thing has a probability, I suppose, to block all incoming damage from the front. And also, what I thought might be the case is that because I shot a grenade at it, it would remove its armor or something like that. Some of the XCOM games do mechanics like that. Well, it doesn't in this case, and to be honest, I still don't even know what armor does. I'm going to be brutally honest there. I think it might tell you somewhere. It certainly doesn't tell you enough, because I just don't even get like what armor is supposed to be. What I want to see is the calculation for how armor actually factors into how much damage you take. I guess it makes it go down, but by how much I have no idea, and in what way I have no idea. And also, there is the concept of armor-piercing attacks in the game as well, which play into it somehow. Well, things go well because we knock out an alien on one side of the garden and point-blank range kill the other. You might have seen me there checking some damage on the stun baton for a second. I actually only got that knockout on the alien because of an unknown good RNG chance of getting an unusually powerful stun off the baton. One of these things where I'm just gambling, but with absolutely no idea what the odds of the gambling are. Well, things go well after that, because we take out the thing in the road after it just missed me and shot a shield, and we come away with nobody dead. That's what really matters in these missions. We got experience points and didn't lose anybody. That's the main purpose of these missions. The civilians, well, they all died, but I think that still counts as completing the terror mission. That's fine. And you can see we're absolutely laden with medals right here. The medals are little like challenge things you get for killing 5 enemies or something like that, and you get one for being shot, so everybody's going to get one of those at some point, I imagine. And they give you tiny stat boosts, like +1 stat. But having literally +1 time unit can be revolutionarily useful in a situation where that 1 time unit allows you to take an action which has another positive knock-on effect, and, well, you can imagine that sort of thing. So while it feels kind of lame, like you can level up by getting 1 extra number on a number that's on like 80 already, it might save you. Not that you'll notice, so I'm not saying that's a particularly satisfying level up mechanic or anything like that, but if you really think about it, it's more powerful than it looks. And once again, nobody's going to do any work in this base because the storeroom is too full. It's a strange thing because later in the game you'll actually see your own base as a battle map and you'll see that it's massive and is full of empty space. So I'm even more mad about this inventory system. Like, everybody has so much space in this base, it's very luxurious. We can find somewhere to put a box of USB sticks, I'm sure of it. And it also bugs me that the engineers go on strike while the inventory is overloaded. It would be better if they just did nothing. The engineers do have this idle state where they just make you money, but I'd like to see it do that while your inventory is full instead of just stopping production entirely and just not let you make anything because there literally isn't room in the base to make a stun baton. We just can't make it, guys. We're completely like filled up. There's only a little bit of oxygen left because there are so many items here in our room. I don't know what's going on. Obviously, I'm mad about that. Moving on to the next UFO showing up, there's a little subtlety to attacking the UFOs that I forgot about, but the game accounts for you. Here, I'm trying to attack a UFO over the water, and it warns you that if you do this, you don't get a mission, and that reminded me of that from Xenonauts 1 as well. So very good of them to actually have that warning and be like, are you sure you want to not get a mission out of this? Because they could have got away with not doing that and forcing you to learn it the hard way, and people would probably say that I was stupid for suggesting they should have just warned you not to do it. But this time, I get my comeuppance as a loser who's not paying attention. They warned me not to do it, and I didn't. So here we do get a mission from that UFO interception. And it's a mission where there's a celebrity civilian on the field. I say celebrity, in that they're not completely useless. I mentioned before, sometimes the civilians will have guns and will attack the enemy. Here they actually get a kill right there and almost kill that other enemy, although they also do hit my Mars rover, so we lose some health on this thing, which already lost some health due to discovering that there was an enemy right next to it around the hedge. We can just go around and take that guy out, but a pretty decent start to the mission, so thanks to that guy for not only tanking the enemy's shots, but actually killing one of the enemies for me. Although, I think that does steal some experience I might have got, so he has slightly jeopardized the world there. We get some nasty damage here, where an alien comes and shoots through not only the door he just opened, but through the hay bale that visually looks like it completely covers the person who got hit. Another one of those things where it probably counts as 40% cover despite 95% covering them. That old chestnut. Now, as for my retaliation strike, I could just shoot back, but first I need to check around and see, is there somebody who can heal Hitsnawen again before they fire, because I don't have enough time units to heal and fire with that one character. We do have somebody else who can heal Hitsna. That prevents the bleeding status from reducing health at the end of the turn, so it's just important to get that going. And then boom, we shoot through our own cover and indeed the door the enemy was behind to hit them, 100% chance shot. Looks like the jank works both ways, sorry aliens. Here we are attacking the UFO towards the end of the mission. We get a decent suppress on 2 of the 3 enemies, and then surprisingly good, gets surprisingly good RNG and shoots that guy out of cover at the back. Pretty nice. Now, entering and attacking here is going to be pretty easy. The thing is, I didn't actually suppress the brain thing, so there was a chance it could do what it does here and shoots at us, but we just take it on the shield, so no damage taken. And here's where the guessing the enemy stats comes in. I figured this enemy can't overwatch again, so I don't need to suppress it, we'll just start attacking it. Now I could just kill it right now, but I didn't. Instead, I selected somebody and decided to start attacking the other enemy instead, using this burst fire where every shot misses, and sick dick goes down to a second overwatch. So it's like, oh, they can do 2 overwatches in one turn, and oh, that was a terrible move from me. Now this is a situation where I'm not going to complain about the game, because that's a mistake where it's entirely obvious what you needed to do different to stop it from happening, so that's a good gameplay punishment, as opposed to it just sort of happening and being like, wah, like the firing at the enemy and getting that 33% chance to hit and missing all the shots. That happens just before. And then we go on to just kill that brain, which I could have done before doing the sick dick move to completely avoid the risk of that happening. Completely stupid from me. So that's the sort of bad occurrence that I like to see, one that immediately teaches you something about how to play better. And the good news is, Sick Dick's still alive, despite his sickness, because of that thing I mentioned before, where there's a 50% chance you won't die. For whatever reason, it very rarely triggers, despite me saying it's 50%. I'm guessing there are other conditions. I think you have to die only a little bit, so your negative health isn't too negative after you take your final hit for you to be survivable. Not quite sure what the rules are, of course, but there are some rules, so sometimes people don't die, and it finally happened. We're also now upgrading to the laser tier of weaponry, so we'll finally get some better guns. This is going to cost us loads of cash, and this is a game where you can't really invest in everything. You can't take all of the upgrade tiers on everything, so if you upgrade your weapons, maybe you can't upgrade your armor. Or if you upgrade your planes, maybe you can't upgrade anything. It's sort of a trade-off, and I didn't realize that at first because I was just getting everything, and the end result is that my base development is going to be slower, and I'm not putting any money at all into planes and barely researching planes as well, and that's going to increasingly become an issue because the plane combat aspect doesn't really have a difficulty progression. It just jumps suddenly, so if you don't have the right planes at the right moment, you'll be in trouble. So we'll see that later on, basically. I'm just foreshadowing that happening. We've got 2 UFOs downed near our main base. I'm considering sending out the second squad from the other base to do the other mission simultaneously to the first mission, but I don't really want to either because I don't trust the second squad to do very well. I can also just skip the mission by taking some money from it instead, but I don't think the money is worth it unless you really can't do a mission. The chance to get experience points and the money you get after a mission by selling the stuff you picked up, it's probably going to be worth more. I suppose the downside is you have to play the game and expose your soldiers to risk as well. That's the real downside. Well, this mission goes pretty well to start with. We get some nice shooting through that window. That was a moment, by the way, when I was shooting over a crouched shield guy, but I still had a chance to hit the rock in front of the shield guy. One of those situations where that absolutely should not be happening. Line of sight jank was just getting in my way, and if I'd missed that shot because of that, I would have been really mad. But because the good thing happened, I'm less mad. Well, I'm still a bit mad because I'm ranting about it now, many days after the fact. The other enemy nearby wasted the end of their turn by jumping over the cover they were behind, allowing me to instantly kill them, so that's more good RNG. Here's some good RNG as well, I suppose. We enter this building as the enemy that was standing there is facing the other door, so no risk of overwatching as we burst through the door. In fact, we're just doing that to them. This is an example of the gameplay I was talking about in my rant video, where I said I wanted to be fast, furious, and guaranteed. The ability to just burst into a room and instantly kill whoever's in there if they're not looking at you. That's what I want, and that was a case of that actually happening with 100% probability. I just want that to always be the case, essentially, for my fast and furious version of Xenonauts/XCOM that I'm imagining. I suppose I'm sort of playing the game in such a style to try and make it be like that, tending to only take really high probability shots. Here's a weird little shot we can take where it kinda looks like that alien shouldn't be visible from that direction. Well, maybe there's a little slither there where we could shoot through and kill that guy. All good, so we've secured the area in front of the UFO. Because I got to the UFO, I decided to not bother going around the rest of the map, which does matter to some extent, as we'll see. This is a double door UFO, so somebody has to go inside to open more doors for us to be able to see what's going on inside. And what's going on inside is pretty good, actually. There are 4 aliens, but 3 of them have their backs to the door we just opened. So we got really good movement RNG on the random movement of the enemies. They were all moving away from us in their previous turn, I suppose. So we get a free turn where we don't have to flashbang. We can just enter the UFO and spend all of our time units on attacking. allowing us to freely dispatch all of them pretty easily. This doesn't end the mission though, so that tells me that either there's somebody hiding in the corner, which there wasn't, or that because we didn't clear the map, there's some more stuff out there that we haven't done. What you can do though is just stand here. If you have the UFO under your control, you win after a while. The downside to this is, by not finishing the mission completely, you're leaving experience points and loot on the table, so we get a lesser completion of the mission. The upside is, you don't have to do the rest of the mission, and obviously I couldn't be bothered, so we just leave with whatever we had then. Now after that, here's an example of the difficult fighter situation we're going to end up in. The enemy have started deploying fighters. There's some day where they just start doing this against you. And if your fighters can't defeat their fighters, then you just don't have air superiority anymore, and here's us discovering this the hard way, like everything. We try to auto-resolve a 2-on-2 and we get obliterated, so our fighters can't go 1-on-1 with the enemy presumably. What we can do though is try to fight manually to get a different result, and there's the warning that you're in an incomplete area of the game, so be careful. Well, it's pretty much like Xenonauts 1, so I had a vague idea of what to do. And that thing was leave immediately. That's what I'm looking to do. You can click this retreat button. Unfortunately, after you click it, I noticed my guys were flying right at the enemy, and I was like, is that retreating? So I started turning retreat mode off and on. That was a problem, and it causes us to lose one of our fighters. Essentially, retreat mode sets you into this state where you can't give any orders for 3 seconds, and if you don't give any orders, your planes just sort of disappear. They teleport out of the battle and you're considered to not have died. So it happened to one plane there, but the other, because I was messing around, couldn't retreat and was just doing nothing, so died. Anyway, the main point is that the aliens can just take us out of the sky whenever they want at this stage in the campaign. We'll eventually have to reckon with that, and be careful because indeed our transports can be attacked by fighters, so we need to pay attention to what's around as we go to crash sites. But in this case, we're fine to do this next mission. We get off to a terrible start with this mission. We've not only accidentally gone in at night, but we immediately lose a party member after I looked out the helicopter, saw an alien, fired at them, but somebody fired in Overwatch from the other direction that we can't see and sailed a shot through the whole chopper, hitting someone at the back. So that sucked, and I was like, oh, okay. This is technically an avoidable situation again, because what I should have done is what I'm going to do now. I just never expected that. Overwatch could even trigger from other enemies, I suppose, or trigger like really far away from what you're doing. It's this guy over here overwatching against the shot off in the other direction. I always imagined that the Overwatch reaction fire had to be more directly in reaction to what's happening. Well anyway, now we know there's a floating thing out there. We deploy most of the team against it, didn't do anything special against this guy, just fired at it with everything we had. It luckily didn't shoot us back, and then we take it out at that point-blank range that just about avoids getting blown up in the process, so that's nice. But here's a cleverer engagement later, against the same enemy. We've drawn it in close. I used that smoke so it couldn't shoot at us during its previous turn, and it's come in quite close to our squad. And we've got various guys around it. The gimmick with this enemy I mentioned before is that they're really strong against frontal attacks, or basically invincible. However, they turn to look at you whenever you do something, so by having somebody move to the right, it exposes its flank to these other people who can now shoot at it. The downside is it will turn every time you fire at it, and as we saw there, we barely did any damage to it. It has those 2 layers of armor. As I said, I don't really know what armor even does. Here, it's got a second kind of armor that I even less know what it does. It's possible it's an armor against a certain kind of attack, such as armor against energy attacks, or maybe it's a kind of armor that can't be penetrated and that's why it's distinct, because various attacks have armor penetration values. Well, whatever the case is, I throw something into that pond back there, making the enemy turn round, and then we get that cheeky rear attack for a tiny bit more damage. But yes, we're not really getting anywhere close here. I'm also not using the full team against it, because there was also a Scion off to the left somewhere. So I have to commit a few guys to take that guy out. That succeeds, but it means we can't kill this blob, and now it's right in front of us, and it starts blasting, and it actually takes out Mrs. Rarely, who we can't even see there. She was hiding behind a rock that's out of view from this camera angle, but said rock did not provide cover from that fire as it happens. One of the cases where it actually looks like the rock wouldn't provide that much cover as well. Although again, if you're crouching, it sort of should. Let's just stop mentioning that because of course it's going to apply to basically every shot. So now this map is going pretty badly so far. We've lost 2 party members. Only one of them felt really frustrating. That second one was okay because that was fair and square. We were just blasting at each other and they have more health than us. We're supposed to not attack with so few people so as to let it attack us at close range. I don't think you can suppress these things or otherwise do something to stop them from attacking you. I could try and smoke everything, but then again, if you try to smoke everything, you're attacking the enemy even less, and they might just come into point-blank range out of the smoke and shoot you even more times. So hard to know what the right call there is. I tend to go for the aggressive option because killing the enemy stops them shooting at you and removes the question altogether. But in this case, looks like it didn't work out. Here's another case where it didn't work out so well. I tried to attack this guy over here and, well, we completely miss, but then we get another mind control. This is one of those enemies where if you try to do something against them, you might get one of those status effects and boom, we lose sniper spam over there. That was a shame, and I'm starting to think, okay, can I knock her unconscious so I don't have to kill her? Turns out though that, like in XCOM as I recall, if you kill the alien that inflicted the effect does go away. I remember wondering if that would be the case and just automatically assuming it wouldn't because Xenonauts is mean to me. I thought it's not going to be that nice. If it's going to be so mean as to make you get mind controlled from firing at them, it probably doesn't let you reverse it either. But it does as it turns out, so that's nice. Now I set up for the usual thing where we hang out by the door of the UFO, and it just goes really badly. We miss the overwatch as the enemy walks out, we take a whole bunch of shooting as well. Edna Excellent was mesmerized as it said. I don't quite know what that does. I'm guessing it removes your time units or makes you suck in the next turn or something. We can now blast forward into the UFO and things go badly again. We take an overwatch shot going through that door, which I didn't expect, because the little aliens very rarely overwatch against you. But this one hits me twice at point blank range, the shield doesn't count, and we straight up die. And I was just like, oh my god, how is this mission going so poorly? Another case though, where the answer's fairly obvious. I have enough flashbangs to just flash that enemy and then attack them, so that there is a 0% chance of what just happened happening. I just didn't expect it to happen, and I think the lesson we're gradually learning over the course of the campaign is you have to be more careful than you think you need to be, and that will eventually pay off, even though in sort of real life meta terms, it's kind of annoying and kind of boring to play really carefully, as I've ranted about before. Well, we get shot again in the same mission. We're both shooting at each other through this wall here in the corner, so it looks a bit bad, but technically we're both leaning around the door and shooting at each other in a weird sort of way. And again, I could just flashbang this guy. I can prevent them from being able to shoot. I'm just not doing it. I think we're actually safe now in this case because this kind of enemy can't overwatch twice. Well, I thought the little enemy couldn't overwatch even once, and it turns out that can do it twice, so what do I know, basically? And we come away from the mission again with another round of bad RNG, because as mentioned, there's a 50% chance that each killed member might survive and just be heavily wounded. Well, they all died, so that's a bit of bad luck as well, and the rest of the entire squad's pretty beat up as well, so basically the second team is not only depleted, but is in terrible condition. That just sucks, and I just thought, how do I have such bad luck? But to some extent, bad play is also to blame there. The lessons to learn being always look in every direction before doing anything, don't fight at night, always use the full team together if you can, and flash every enemy even if you really think they probably won't overwatch against you. They still might, so you might as well flash them if you can. Even though flashing enemies does forego doing damage to some extent that turn because the person who throws the flash probably won't do as much damage during the turn. So you could argue that you're making it more likely the enemy will survive their turn if you don't play things aggressively, and then they might attack you normally instead of attacking you through Overwatch. So you're still taking a risk even if you go for the flashbang route, unless you're certain you'll kill them after flashing them, and usually you can be certain of that, I find. So that's my recommendation to myself. I'll be learning it more and more as we go on, probably. Here was a case where we lose a battle against a scout. I was just finding out if one fighter could kill an enemy scout UFO. Well, they can't, but by manually resolving, we save our fighter, and then we send 2 fighters to fight the scout, and this will work. So that will trigger a mission, and we recently got another mission nearby the first base as well. So 2 missions good to go. You might have also seen I've got the first base creating all of the higher level armor. So Our first team, seen here, is now wearing a bit of armor. What does the armor do? We still don't quite know, of course, but I think it makes you take less damage. That seems like a safe assumption, so it's probably good to have, although it also reduces your accuracy to wear armor, which is one of those things where it's like, I really want more accuracy. You're gonna make me sacrifice accuracy for an unknown amount of protection. It made me consider not doing it, basically. And ultimately I went the opposite way. I armored everybody over time, and I feel like this might be a beginner's trap. Maybe it's way too expensive to do this and I should only have a few party members be armored. Well, we ended up playing it safe, on the ground at least, and spending all the money that's supposed to be going into the air war. We'll get back to that. We started this map in a dangerous situation with enemies to the right and left of the chopper, but we were pretty lucky. We killed the enemy on the left by using some smoke to conceal movement over there and just taking them down, and the ones on the right tried to go inside a nearby building. I spammed grenades to kill one of them. We shot and killed one earlier, as you might have seen, and the final one, in the first and now last time I've seen this happen in the game, panicked. I've never seen the enemy's morale break. I didn't think they had morale, so you can in some way freak the enemy out and they just miss their turn. And it wasn't that difficult either. I threw 2 grenades at them. That was the thing that freaked them out. I don't know if they get panicked if they're alone or out of cover or something like that. There are probably more factors. Well, we get good RNG on that shot through the smoke to take out that guy. In fact, we actually took him alive because he was slightly stunned from the smoke he's standing in. That ended up being a really good start to the mission, a perfect contrast to the previous mission essentially. As we approach the UFO, we see this civilian decide to go inside. I mentioned earlier, I was trying to work out if you could guess where the aliens were based on where the civilians were running away from. Well, they also run towards the aliens, as it turns out. You might think maybe they're just moving completely randomly, but we'll see in a second evidence against that idea as well. At least it does give us the layout of the UFO and tell us how many enemies are inside, because the door opened briefly. But we get unlucky when we attack, because the aliens were all on the left side, and I had set up to shoot towards the left and right side once the door was open. That means that after we open the door, only some of our shots will be available and we can't do that much to the enemy, although we do kill one of them, so that's nice. I ended up using a smoke to block any counter fire, and then I went in the next turn for some melee attacks. This time, we've actually flashed them so that we don't get killed while we do this. It looks like I might have learned the lesson eventually during the previous mission that you might as well flash everything. I tend to find that you don't run out of the grenades you bring on missions. You usually have enough to use them pretty liberally. So before I was always thinking maybe I shouldn't use my flashes if I really don't have to in case I need it later. But you almost always come away from a mission with most of your throwables unthrown. You can carry quite a few, and you get more and more as the game goes on because your characters get stronger so they can lift more grenades with them, that sort of thing. Now note, as I'm fighting this other alien in the corner, 2 more civilians came into the UFO during our advance through it, which suggests that maybe their movement isn't random. Maybe they really are trying to move towards surviving aliens. I don't know. So we take out that alien in the corner, the other civilians are just chilling, and there's one more alien to kill because this is a multi-floor UFO with teleport pads, and this reminded me of Xenonauts 1, which does this. I remembered this was a feature, and I quite like it as well. You can't get overwatched, I think, as you go through a teleport, so while you appear right in front of enemies with these moves, the final teleportation movement doesn't count as an overwatchable move. That means you're free to teleport into a room and flash it as you appear, which makes teleporting into rooms quite a lot safer than you feel it is. You think you're teleporting into danger, but actually it's pretty safe. It's the same deal as opening a door, maybe even safer than that. One little subtlety there is that as I flashed that enemy, it actually suppressed somebody on the floor below, so flashbang suppression has a vertical area of effect and it can go through floors. That might be nice to know. Well, obviously from there we just go in and win the mission, so I'm going straight on to the next mission, which was the other one I set up at the same time. Unfortunately it's a night mission. But we get a good start, we secure our landing zone thanks to our Mars rover, although I think attacking enemies with the rover is kind of a bad idea because the rover can't get experience points and level up its accuracy by shooting at things. You want everyone else to shoot to get more accurate, and we certainly need it on this second team. Check out this terrible overwatch. we'd set up so that basically the entire squad could fire at one enemy. They do, and they don't even kill it, but they do get suppression, so that means it cancels the rest of its turn. That most likely avoids us getting shot at close range and potentially losing a party member, and then we get the finish. But it just goes to show that even if you're facing one enemy with your whole squad, that's like the only possible safe situation. If there'd been 2 enemies there, we probably would have been fired at. At least after that, we can go in to the UFO with the whole squad. We captured 2 enemies alive, and that was that. Another successful mission. The month ended after that, so it's time to spend some cash. This would be a great time for me to upgrade my Air Force, but again, I'm still not really thinking about that. My main priority was to upgrade the research facilities, because I keep thinking we need to get ahead in the research tree. In retrospect, I don't think you really need to do this that much, because based on your strategy or your build, you don't need every tech. And because the game is in early access, we'll see later that a lot of the techs don't work, or don't exist in the game, I should say. Like, you get to halfway through a tech tree and it will just stop. So you don't need research in this campaign that I'm playing as much as you probably would in like the finished version of the game, I don't know. So me speccing into research isn't going to be that useful as it turns out. Now, we've unlocked the Cleaner Headquarters mission. This is the way to remove the Cleaner faction, which I think stops the panic, which is those numbers at the very bottom, from going up, which I think causes you to get more money at the end of each month. Therefore, it would be good to do it at some point, but there are also these other missions on the side that we saw before, the Cleaner Cells. So I'm finally going to bother to do these missions. Doing them makes the Headquarters mission easier. Not by enough, I would say, that it really matters. It removes some small buffs that the enemies get, but you could probably do it without doing these cleaner missions. And that might be a good idea, because these cleaner missions are among the hardest in the game. At least they are at first. I think they don't scale up, so the fact we have the second tech level of armor and weapons means all of our individual soldiers now have advantages over the enemy. So it might be challenging to do with your initial squad set up as Xenonauts, but now we're upgraded a bit. We can often kill the enemy in one hit, and we don't die in one hit to their attacks, and that just makes life a lot easier. For example, right there, we survive a hit, shoot back, and get a kill from my eyes closed. Well, all we need to do is rush the building with the VIP in it, and that's the subtlety to these missions. That's the secret, I should say. I mentioned in my rant video that I posted separately that these missions are surprisingly difficult, and the reason, I suppose, is that you're supposed to just know where to go. Once you do know where to go, they're much easier. Well, I'll explain that more in a second, but essentially I'm going to be rushing in this mission, which is why I've done a move like this, running this guy out of our formation, out of cover to a dangerous spot, because we need to search all of the nearby buildings as soon as possible, because enemies will just spawn after a while. We need to complete this mission ASAP. However, I don't know what building to search, and I believe the VIP will always spawn in the same place, so from the developer's point of view, it's probably quite easy to find the VIP, because you just go to where you know they are already. But I'm wasting a whole bunch of turns and time units looking around, searching buildings, trying to look through the windows of the buildings nearby to guess if it might be the one to go in. We've even got characters at the back there who are doing absolutely nothing right now. What we need to do is go up and left, because as I actually discovered the first time I did this in my first campaign, which was part of my rant video, the VIP is in a certain room in the first building up and left of where you land, and here's footage of me wasting time checking other buildings, being like, maybe they're in this one. I just figured it would be random, but I don't think it is. So we are getting some extra kills and some extra security by looking around the edges and taking out some enemies over there, but we're not killing the VIP as soon as possible, meaning the probability that we'll have to face a bunch more enemies later is rising. It might be possible to really rush the first building with all of your team, ignore most of the enemies, and just complete the mission not only before enemies start to spawn, but before the enemies already on the map really get many chances to see you or shoot at you. Well, here we are, because half of the team went forward into the correct building, which is essentially confirming that this is the correct building for me now, because this was the second time I'd seen the VIP be in this building and in this spot. So we'll see that once we have to do this mission again, I'll have some intel on where they're going to be based on this pattern. We aren't able to kill the VIP right away, but we do get them suppressed. Obviously, if I'd taken the whole team in, we probably would have just killed them instantly, so that's an example of the problems we're facing by not really committing. We're lucky enough in that the VIP misses their return fire, but we're not lucky in terms of that attack coming in from the right. I no longer had anybody watching the right-hand side of our deployment area. I think there the correct thing to do would not be in the deployment area anymore. If we'd actually rushed the building with the whole squad, something like that wouldn't have been so much of a problem. So we lost one of our snipers. We have the opportunity here probably to capture the VIP alive, but I think that doesn't matter anymore. I believe if you did this mission before you knew about the headquarters, capturing them alive would make the headquarters spawn earlier in the campaign, so you could get the cleaners out of the way earlier and get more money as a result, as I ranted about earlier. But again, how much money you get, whether it's worth the risk, who actually knows? That would be something you'd have to try loads of times to get a good feel for. Well, we've done the thing. It's time for us to leave. However, on the way out, the enemy is spawning all over the place, and I need to take this corpse with me because this is a fleeing mission. If I want any chance of getting that 50% chance for a character to not die, I need to take the character with me to the chopper, so we can pick up the body of My Eyes Closed. However, there is a decision to make here because they also dropped a precision laser. It's worth quite a lot of money, and in a very humane decision, after initially thinking I'll just take the laser and leave the corpse, we're going to take the corpse instead. We're going to take the heroic option. That's going to cost us $50,000. Well, maybe the family can reimburse us since we managed to deliver the corpse back to them. Or maybe somebody could give me $50,000 for trying to defend the entire planet from an alien invasion. I don't know. Well, as you can see, I actually went back for the precision laser, slightly delaying my exit because I did want it. I realized that somebody else could just carry it. The risk there is that having a second person climb up on the shipping container to get it means exposing them to potential Overwatch fire. However, as you can also see, all over the place I'd smoked the lines of sight that the enemy would probably use to shoot me as I escaped. So because of that, we have a relatively safe escape. If only we'd gone in faster, that probably would have been a perfect execution of the mission. But we do come away with that casualty, so even though I recovered the corpse, we don't get the save. That's unfortunate. Again, being pretty unlucky with the supposed 50% chance of saving a party member. I think it's only 50% on easy difficulty, by the way. I think normally it's lower than that. Well, maybe it actually is lower than that since it never seems to go off. I sent the first squad again to do the other cleaner mission, not trusting the second squad with this sort of thing, this sort of relatively difficult setup. But now, of course, we have some more intel. Now we know we probably just need to push forwards, and that was confirmed even further by seeing that this mission is on the same map. I think it's almost the same map. It's slightly different, but vaguely the same. So that's even more suggestion that simply pushing forwards to the same point as last time would complete this mission. But again, I do have quite a few people hanging out around the containers because there are enemies coming from the left and right, and I bothered to have people monitoring for them. But to some extent, I'm going to be a bit more careful here about not leaving people sitting on roofs so much. Well, obviously I haven't been that careful because if you check the bottom of the screen, I've got someone sitting in a pool of their own blood on top of one of those containers. The upside to being up there is that you get to see really far. You can see the enemy coming in, but you can also have your sniper wait at the bottom of the ladder and then climb up and only fire during their turn, and then climb back down for the enemy turn if you have enough time units, and good snipers usually do have enough time to move a bit and then fire. Although I think you get a massive accuracy bonus if you don't move before firing, so there's also some advantage to sitting up there. You might get enough accuracy bonus that you can straight up shoot through cover and get more shots to land. Well, looks like we're sparing no one, not even the wall, into the building we need to enter. We blow that guy out of existence, and that hole in the wall makes it a bit easier for us to get in and out, because now that door just next to it has an exit by it as well. And this is especially important for shield carriers, because while normal soldiers can smash windows and climb through walls, shield carriers need a full gap or a door to go through. So this has increased our access here a little bit. Although I made what is probably a mistake here by not entering the building with this shield guy. We are low on time units, so it's hard to do, but I could have walked forward another tile at least. And the upside to doing that would mean that if I'm in the building, I can't get shot by people out in the street. And the risk of somebody, say, bursting through the door in front of me and firing at me is about the same, really. That's probably the risk I was thinking of when not really wanting to go in. I also probably wanted to crouch during my turn, because crouching gives you this universal defense against being attacked against. Even if you're not crouching behind cover, I think you're just 20% less likely to get hit by something if you are crouched, so that's handy. But the point is, having that little two-man team standing in the road doesn't turn out to be very helpful. Not only is there actually somebody in the room there that we hadn't seen, there's someone else we can't see down the road who fires and kills the assault behind the shield guy. That was sniff and shoot, I believe. So that is unfortunate, and that was also very avoidable. If I'd burst into the room, while I would have been in the line of sight of the first enemy, pretty much just the same, we probably wouldn't have been in the line of sight of the second enemy. Another mistake really, where it feels fairer than a janky mistake. It feels like, okay, I should have known something like that was a risk or a possibility. I should have smoked the flank of that guy so I couldn't get shot from the direction where we couldn't really see if there were enemies. Sometimes you'll see me in this campaign, or you might have seen me before, being cautious like that and trying to smoke places where I think I might be attacked. Other times, I kind of just get lazy and think, oh, there probably isn't somebody there, and just go for it. However, now and again there is. Usually there isn't. All the stuff I'm cutting out is times when it was safe to move around and it always turned out there was nobody there. But the one time it turns out there is someone there, that can be a major problem. So yes, I think the lesson is just be liberal about throwing smokes and trying to stay in cover, and actually bothering to think about possible sight lines and where the enemy might be, even if you haven't seen if there's somebody there yet. These sorts of things. I like that the game makes you make these considerations, although it would be a little bit easier to make them, admittedly, if things like sightlines and the way that visually sightlines match up with how the game processes them was a bit more consistent and less janky. Well, we've shot that guy. We're going to make the same mistake by throwing someone out into the road there, but luckily after shooting that guy there isn't somebody else over there to shoot me as well. So we're okay for now, and we're searching for a snipe on this guy out in the other side of the base, and there it is. The situation is secure. Let's go for the VIP. There was only one enemy guarding the building with the VIP in it, so we burst on through, killed them, enter the VIP room. We've got them suppressed. We don't bother going for the capture, of course. This quick shotgun shot to the back of the head deals with everything. And then we make a run for it, not bothering to stop and throw smoke, anything like that. I just sprinted for the chopper, and I think we got the VIP a turn earlier because the enemy reinforcements only started spawning while I was running back, and we don't engage any of them during the escape. So that was perfect. Nobody could really see us escaping in this situation, so the speed was on our side. But I did forego picking up our fallen party member, so we're not going to get any chance of that recovery after the mission, and we also lose their equipment as well, so we did make a trade-off for that quick and relatively safe escape. Well, it's done now. The cleaners now have reduced defense and worse weapons because we completed those missions, meaning it's time for us to go after their base, and here it is. We're once again sending the first squad to do it. But that is all for this part of this commentary, because we actually happen to be about halfway through the campaign, as that endgame progress thing at the bottom of the geoscape says. So we might as well cut things here, because I wanted this to be less than 2 hours long just for no particular reason, and I'll be back with part 2 of the Xenonauts campaign, where we're going to start off with the base attack on the cleaners, and the base attacks are my favourite part of the game as well, so this is the juicy part. They are the tense and tight indoor missions where they're more action-packed. At least they can be more action-packed. We'll see several base missions actually coming up in part 2, and we'll be progressing towards what you might call the end of the game. But as you might know, the game as it stands in its current state doesn't have an end, but it does have a sort of you've completed the game state where it declares that you've won. So we'll be not getting the full Xenonauts experience, but we'll get the amount they decided to sell to people for now. I've been talking about learning lessons the hard way throughout this campaign, and of course, the overall meta experience of playing Xenonauts 2 is to learn the hard way that you shouldn't be playing Xenonauts 2, at least not until it's finished. That's probably going to be a better idea. But if you want, you can lose the money now and play less of the game, and, well, we're going to see what happens if you choose to do that by trying to get to some kind of ending-like experience. Perhaps it will be as good as this ending-like experience of this video, but of course it actually isn't the end. You are watching this campaign commentary in early access. I'm going to patch my YouTube channel later to have the rest of the commentary, so you better come back for that. Yes, we can all play this game now, it seems. So yes, much more Xenonauts coming in part 2, the better part of the game in my opinion as well.